Hey y'all, I'm Sugar, and I'm bringing you an actually affordable build guide for Stormweaver that does millions of damage that I built from the ground up for only 10 divines. Here is my cast on shock lightning conduit Sparkmage. I was inspired to create this guide while helping other Stormweavers who were struggling with damage and couldn't afford the builds out there that cost hundreds of divines to make. Credit to Ripsalot for showing me the expensive version of this build. Check out his channel for that gameplay. I have also included a loadout of my over 6 million DPS level 95 builds that two-shots pinnacle bosses comfortably in the PoB, as well as search links and more in the notes section. The background footage is also labeled by which budget I was using at the time of recording. So let's get into it. We use Spark to apply shock, exposure, and electrocute. It is not our main DPS skill. Then, Cast on Shock triggers Lightning Conduit, which does huge chunks of damage, one-shotting everything and even the max zone levels, including delirious maps. Here are the skills and links that I use. Archmage, Lightning Mastery for +1 level. Spark, Overcharge for magnitude, lightning exposure. Acceleration makes the sparks travel further during their duration. Strip Away increases the exposure effect, and either Conduction to apply shock even with the highest boss ailment thresholds, or Mobility to keep it moving in maps. Cast on Shock, Lightning Conduit. Lightning Conduit synergizes well here because it does 100% more damage per 5% shock effect on the enemy. Inspiration to lower the cost of it. Impetus and energy retention to proc Cast on Shock consistently, and either Shock Siphon to replenish our energy shield, or Control Destruction for more damage and to ensure that our lightning damage is lucky. Conductivity, Heightened Curse for more effects, Hex Bloom to spread the curse, and Curse Ground to bypass the activation delay. Take out Hex Bloom for bossing so it costs less. Flame Wall for the added damage when our projectiles pass through it, Fortress to make it a circle we can stand within for maximum coverage, Spell Cascade gives us 3 of them, and Fire Mastery for +1 level. Soul Offering gives us the 5-second buff that grants us more spell damage. Link Dance Macabre and Ablation for 60% increased buff effect, and Persistence to make it last longer. Orb of Storms, link Font of Mana to create an area around the orb that replenishes our mana, and considered casting for more damage. Sigil of Power is not a skill gem. We are granted this skill by using a Chiming staff. Look for one with +1 level of spell skills. It's not a lightning spell. Grim Feast if you can afford the spirit. Okay, next up, let's talk about gear. Always cap your elemental resistances. Generally, look for the biggest energy shield rolls that you can get, along with any flat mana, intelligence, or mana regeneration you can afford. We wear the Everlasting Gaze amulet with Lightning Rod anointment. You can find one already anointed with it, or buy the amulet and emotions separately for 1 to 2 divines total. Get a 30% roll. We need 60 spirit from gear to run Cast on Shock, and since we use the Everlasting Gaze amulet, we need to get that 60 from Chess Piece, Helmet Corruption, and or Venter's Gamble rings. I suggest using the search link I have provided to buy cheap Venter's rings that cap your resists and have more spirit on them. We don't use them for rarity, and since the lower rarity rolls are less wanted, they're super cheap for us. If you reach 90 spirit on gear, you can also run Grim Feast to overcap your energy shield pool for super comfort. A +5 wand is really a must, but you can get away with all the other mods on your weapon until you can save up to buy a better one. Cast speed inflates the spark tooltip numbers, but we don't really need it because we one-shot everything, so we don't need to cast spark that often, and more cast speed makes it too easy to overcast our mana pool away. Your focus also needs +2 spells, but increased damage mods aren't that important really. I suggest you look for mana regen first, and if you can afford it, add in increased damage, spell, or lightning. Our gloves are Kotoko's current, because Electrocute is a great defensive layer. It immobilizes enemies for a few seconds, preventing them from hitting you. Buy a pair that has the corruption Damage Penetrates Lightning resistance. Put a % increased mana soul core in this socket because the energy shield isn't high enough for the 20% rune to matter anyway. Mana Flask. Increased amount recovered and reduced charges used. Removing your life flask completely once you take Chaos Inoculation prevents the flask charges you gain from being split between both, so only your mana flask gains charges. Charm. Thawing Charm because getting frozen sucks. Jewels. Okay, here's the tricky part. Base shock is 20% and max is 100%. We need 400% increased magnitude of shock to reach the max effects. We get 180% from this tree and 75% from overcharge support. So we still need a combined 145% increased magnitude from our jewels to reach max. You can get up to 10% increased magnitude added to the notable from the radius time loss jewel, which we use near energized efficiency. This jewel also needs 25% increased effect of small passives to buff the 8% increased energy small passives up to 10% each, and the 16% increased triggered spell damage small passives up to 20% each. This helps cast Unshock to proc consistently on all monster types. So that gives us 8 regular jewel slots to add up to 135% increased magnitude, which comes out to roughly 17% on each jewel. You want at least one of these to also have 2% mana on kill. Shop around, set up a whoop, or gather these as you gain enough currency. These are a huge multiplier for us, but most builds don't use rare jewels because they use adorned, which gives us the opportunity to buy these cheap. I spent between 10x and 100x on each of these jewels. The rest of the mods on your jewels can include any of these helpful mods. Mana regen, increased max energy shield, triggered spells deal increased damage, meta skills gain increased energy, chance to inflict shock or ailment, or cast speed. The tree. Our tree is designed to take every increased magnitude of shock node in the top half of the passive tree. Our ascendancy passives are Strike Twice, which gives us double shocks on enemies, Scouring Winds to increase the exposure effect, Constant Gale for Arcane Surge, and Force of Will to increase the Arcane Surge effect. Subscribe to my YouTube for more footage and updates. I'll be streaming on Twitch more, so feel free to stop by and ask questions or just hang out at twitch.tv/SugarCanedGames. I hope to see y'all soon, and remember, be good or be good at it.